This video will show you how to create a Turnitin PeerMark assignment. The papers that you want reviewed in PeerMark have to be submitted to the Content tool, not assignments. As such, this video will cover how to create the assignment that is to be reviewed, as well as how to create the PeerMark assignment associated with it. To create the assignment, click on Content. Under the Existing Activities menu, click Turnitin PeerMark. Enter in the assignment name, instructions for submitting the assignment, point value, start date, due date, and feedback release date. The feedback release date is when you want your students to see the feedback you provide to the assignment. If you want your feedback to be released all at once, and you estimate that it will take you a week to grade the assignment, set the feedback release date to be 1 week after the due date. If you do not mind that Student 1 sees their feedback before Student 2, set the feedback release date to match your due date. Then click Submit. Click on the assignment name. Then click the gear sign. Click Optional Settings. Choose if you want the submission to be stored in the paper repository. If this is a rough draft and you are submitting the final draft in another assignment, you may not want to store the rough draft if you do not want it to be compared against the final draft. You can choose to allow submissions of any file type, or just file types that Turnitin can check for similarity. You can allow late submissions for the assignment if you like. Only those students who have not submitted prior to the due date will be able to submit once, and only once, after the due date. You can enable E-Rater spelling and grammar check. Choose the handbook level from the drop-down. Advanced, high school, middle school, elementary, and English learners are your choices. You can choose to compare against the U.S. English Dictionary, the U.K. English Dictionary, or both, and which categories you want checked. You can choose to attach a rubric to this assignment. If you have an existing Turnitin rubric, you can choose that from the drop-down menu, or create a new rubric by clicking on Launch Rubric Manager. This is the Rubric Manager. From the drop-down, you can choose to create a new rubric, or you can choose to import one. Turnitin can import rubrics as Excel spreadsheets and RBC files. For this video, let's create a new rubric. Name the rubric, then enter in each criterion and scale. If you need to add a criterion, click the plus sign icon. If you need to add a scale, click the plus sign icon here. You can choose to weigh the criterion equally or not. Don't forget to set your scale. For example, I have decided that this column will be full credit and ranked as 3, and this column will be considered incomplete and ranked as 1. You can also choose to create a points-based rubric, or a rubric that has no point value and is used for feedback only. When you are done, click Save. You can choose the new rubric from the drop-down menu. You can choose the databases in which to compare the submitted paper, the student paper repository, current and archived website content, and periodicals, journals, and publications. You can choose when a student can access their originality report. You can have the reports generate immediately, but allow no resubmissions. You can choose to generate reports immediately for the first submission and for the next 3 resubmissions, but on the 4th resubmission there will be a 24-hour delay in generating the report. Or you can choose to allow resubmissions, but not to generate a report until the due date. If you are using Turnitin as a teaching tool, it is recommended to generate the report immediately and allow students to resubmit their assignment. You can allow students to see their originality report score. Again, if you are using Turnitin as a teaching tool, it is recommended to allow students to view their report. You can choose to exclude bibliographic material, quoted material, and small sources from the originality report. We will go into more detail on the effects these settings have on the report in the How to Read the Originality Report video. If you want to save these settings as defaults for future assignments, you can. When you are done, click Submit. Your students are ready to submit the assignment that you will later have peer-reviewed. Once your students have submitted the assignment that you want reviewed, click on the assignment name. Once all the submissions are made, you can view the originality report, e-rater spelling and grammar suggestions, provide feedback, and grade the assignments by clicking on the report score. Feedback Studio will open in a new window. To create a peer review of this assignment, click on Settings. Then click Enable PeerMark and Submit. Click on the PeerMark Setup tab. Name the assignment and put the directions for the peer review here. Enter in the point value. The peer review score does not get sent to the gradebook. Instead, you will need to create an assignment column and manually enter in the peer review score in the gradebook. It is recommended to include that in the directions for the student. Next, enter the start date for the peer review. The start date will automatically be set for after the due date of the original paper. Then enter in the due date for the review and the feedback release date. The feedback release date is when students who were reviewed are allowed to see what their peers thought of their paper. If you need to cancel a peer review, you can click here. Please do not click here, as this will create another peer review assignment. Next, click Additional Settings. Under Additional Settings, choose not to award full points, as you have to manually assign point values anyway. You can choose to allow students to view their reviewers' names as well as the author's name. You can allow students that did not submit a paper to review a paper. You can choose how many reviews each student will be assigned by Turnitin, and if you want them to choose a paper to review. Please note that if you let students choose the papers, not all students may get a review. You can require the students to make a self-review. Click Save and Continue. Next, click the PeerMark Questions tab. You can add existing PeerMark questions from your library or choose to add a new question. To add questions from a library, choose the library from the drop-down and then choose the question or questions you want to add. Click Add Selected Questions. To add questions that are not already in a library, choose the question type from the drop-down. Free response or scale are your choices. For free response, enter in the question and set a minimum answer length. Then click Save. You can also choose Scale as a question type. Enter in the question and choose the scale size. 2 to 5 are your choices. Be sure to indicate which is the lowest value and which is the highest value. For clarity purposes, the format of the scale questions should be explicit. For example, your question should state, rate this paper's overall readability. 1, unreadable, 2, somewhat readable, 3, readable, 4, not bad, 5, very readable. Then scroll down and click Save. The questions will show once they are saved. You can choose to save your questions to a library if you wish. To add them to a library, choose an existing library or choose to create a new library. If you create a new library, be sure to name it and save it. You can also choose to delete an existing library. You can choose to reorder your review questions as well. If needed, you can also delete individual questions or edit them. Once a PeerMark assignment start date has passed, the questions cannot be edited, nor can new questions be added. Next, choose the Distribution tab. You can see a list of your students. You can also see how many reviews have been assigned to each student by the system. You can choose to pair the authors manually by clicking the blue plus button, or to exclude a student from making a review by clicking the red minus button. If you want to pair authors manually, click on the student's name, then click Confirm. If you roll over the information icon, you can see who the student was paired with. If you assign students manually, it will show next to the word Forced. If you have assigned one peer review for the students, this becomes their one peer review. If you need to unpair students, click the blue minus button. If you continue pairing students for the peer review, please be aware that the student list to choose from will include all the students' names, not just the ones that have not been paired yet. If you allow Turnitin to pair up the students automatically, you will not see who they are paired with when you hover over the information icon. It will say none assigned, even if they have been assigned a student. In the next video, we will discuss the PeerMark Review tab.